Hello, this is Luke McLean. This is a tutorial for using the program HethFinder that I wrote for analyzing hermit thrush song at the University of New Brunswick. So you should have a folder like this. It needs to have four things in it. The first thing is just this mlsongs.model folder, which is just the machine learning model, and you shouldn't touch that. You shouldn't rename it, but it doesn't need that. The next thing is the wave file. You can see this one with the long name here, and over in type it says wave file. That's just the wave file that we're going to analyze, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And then we have HethFinder. That's actually the Python file that runs the program. You can see it's a Python source file. And then finally, there's this comma separated values file. It's basically a spreadsheet, and it's called HethFinder params. And this is where we specify which waves we want to record, because we could have multiple wave files in here. I'm just using one for this example, but you could have several wave files, and some of them you might want to analyze, some of them you might not want to. So this params file is just so you can designate both the files that you want to analyze and any subsections within them that you might want to just analyze, because it takes time to run the code. And if you have an hour-long wave file, maybe you just want to analyze 10 minutes of it. Well, this is where you can specify that. I'll show you that in a second. So first off, this wave file, I've got it opened in Raven, and we can see that sure enough, there's hermit thrush singing on here. If you're a hermit thrush researcher, I'm sure you can recognize that. You can also see there's some other sounds in here, other birds. Throughout. The other thing there is in this, and this is part of the reason I chose this, is not only are these other birds kind of interfering, but there's also cicadas. I'll show you what that looks like. Yeah, here we go. So these lines, these horizontal lines up high, are cicadas, and they're particularly difficult for HethFinder to sort out because they're horizontal lines, and actually hermit thrush song is also horizontal lines. And it's easy for a human, I think, to tell the difference between the two, but for the computer program, at least as it is, it gets a little bit confused. So we get a chance to see, here's more, that's quite a bit louder. We get a chance to see where it might struggle, and where you might need to fix certain things. Other than that, this is a really good recording in that it's got a strong signal. This was just an automated recorder left in the woods, and nonetheless, it got a strong signal because it was close to the hermit thrush that was singing. And the hermit thrush is continuously singing throughout this 10-minute recording. So this is a good candidate, I would say, for running the program. So the thing we need to do is we're going to open up HethFinder params, and I've got it open here as a spreadsheet. And there's actually three columns here. You can see there's the file name, and I've already input the file name. But you just go over here and grab it. You can copy it here, and then input it over here. And then there's also the start time and end time. And so, you can spread the columns out if you want to see more clearly, because sometimes the name runs into the next cell. But the start time, I'm just going to leave blank, and the end time, I'm going to leave blank, because HethFinder will know that just means grab the whole thing. But I could, in theory, put 25 here if I wanted it to start at the 25-second mark, and maybe 300 if I wanted it to stop at the 300-second mark. You got to enter the time in seconds. So you might have to do a little bit of math if it's a long file. But I'm just going to leave it as is, and make sure you save it. And then I'm going to close it. And now what I want to do is open up the HethFinder. And for that, you need to have Python installed on your program. This requires that you have Python installed on your computer, rather. And what I've done is I have it running through Anaconda, which is a Python package manager, and I run VS Code. So this is VS Code that you're looking at. You could use other package managers or just manage them yourselves, and you could use other IDEs, the program you might have for coding or a coding environment. VS Code is really common. So this is what I'm using. And for installation and all that, I'm not going to include that here because it would take too much. But essentially, you have to install Python and you have to install some of these libraries, particularly TensorFlow and Librosa. The other ones often come with your Python package managers. But it should tell you if there'll be a squiggly line here if these haven't been imported. It'll basically give you an error because you don't have the right libraries. But this program is pretty basic in that it has imports up at the top. This is just the libraries that it requires to run. And then it has a big, huge section with all the functions that I wrote that it's going to use while it's running. And then down at the very bottom, it has the actual main function that it's going to run, that it's going to call all these other functions. So it's called HethFinder main. But you don't have to change anything here. You don't have to edit anything here. Basically, you just open it up so that you can run it. So in this case, I would just open it up and I would hit run, start debugging, and it's going to start going. And if you open up the terminal, that's what I've got down below here. It'll give you some, various kind of warnings or information about different packages that you have. And it actually gives updates on the progress it's making, which may or may not make a lot of sense to somebody using it. But I've got it in there as a way of kind of me monitoring its progress. But this actually takes a while to run, so I'm just going to stop it. So in this case, it's a 10-minute recording, and I think it took about 20 minutes to run. So that's pretty standard. Sometimes it's quicker than that, depending on how much song there is and how much noise there is in the recording. The noisier it is, the harder it is to run. So in this case, there's quite a bit of noise, like there's cicadas and background stuff, and lots of hermit thrush song as well. So it took a little while to run, so maybe 20 minutes, so maybe twice as long as the recording itself. And in other cases, I find it's more like about the length of the recording itself. So when it's done, a little dialog box will pop up and give you a summary of how it did. Essentially that it created a file, and a file will appear in this folder. I took it out just for the sake of this video, but this is the file that would appear. And it's just a text document. And what it is actually is a Raven selection table. So you don't need to open that here. What you'd do is go into Raven and you'd open it up here. You'd navigate to the folder. And now we get a chance to see what HethFinder did. So it's going to select the intro note of each hermit thrush song, or rather it's going to try to. And if I zoom out a bit, you can see that it's actually done pretty well. It's finding all the different hermit thrush songs, but it also is making some errors, and we can talk about those. So in this case, I don't know that this is necessarily an error. This is a weird song type that this bird happens to have. The first sound it makes is actually this fuzzy high region, and it consistently does that. So it doesn't really have an intro note per se. And then it has this little one at the bottom that probably in a lab we would select manually. HethFinder chooses this one because it's the darkest line. And if we zoom in on that, you can see a little more clearly right here. The most significant part of it is this. At least that's how HethFinder chooses it. And that it'll consistently do that. So we're going to find that a lot throughout this. That song type is getting selected. And depending on your research question, that might not be a mistake. Carries on, it's correct here and correct here and correct here. And then you can see the cicada causes problems. So it correctly found a song, but it did not find the intro note for the song because of these other lines up here that to HethFinder look like intro notes. So you would have to delete that manually. You can just select it like this and delete it and then redraw here. And if you've worked in the hermit thrush research, you've done a lot of boxing these notes, which is the whole point of this software. So in this case, you'd have to fix these. This is another one here. The actual intro note is here behind the cicada song. And you can see it's pretty confusing to even for me to look at. It's a little hard to see. So no surprise that a mistake was made there. as we carry on, you can see we're correct here. It didn't make any mistakes in this region. But then here, again, the cicada caused it to have a false positive. There's actually no hermit thrush song here. So, you delete that one. And then carrying on, it starts to do pretty well insofar as there's no cicadas around. And here it's actually, you can see there's lots of background noise, other birds singing, even here, other birds, and it successfully ignores those. That's the beauty of machine learning. And it identifies the hermit thrush song and it selects the right intro note. You can see there's another one of these weird songs that has a vague intro note, but it consistently picks that one. So it's doing pretty well here. You can kind of glance through. Here it did a doubled up. It grabbed two. That's a little bug that it has that I haven't been able to fix yet. But pretty quick to just delete one of those. And then carrying on. And it's doing really well. And so you can see, yeah, it's generally been quite successful, and it'd be a lot quicker to run it and have it make all these selections rather than going through and boxing each of these as you go. So a little bit of manual correction, but overall, a pretty good job. I think on this one, I used this in my accuracy testing. This is about a 30-minute wave file, actually, that I've just cut for this little tutorial, but I think it had about 96% success at finding the songs, and then it had a false positive rate of 5%. So all in all, that's actually, I think really good, and the type of situation where you definitely want to use HethFinder. So that's it. I'm also going to record a video for HethSorter, which is the other half of this project, which is then the labeling of these song types. Because, of course, right now they're not labeled at all. But I've also written a program that will sort them and label them, and it's called HethSorter. So check that out as well, and good luck using the software.